This is Deborah Atkinson, and you're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top questions and things you struggle with most so you can have more energy and less decision fatigue about what to eat, how to move, and you can change your thoughts to Flip 50 with the life and the energy you love in this second half. And I cannot wait to introduce you to my guest today. We are going to have some fun. We are so often happening to talk about lifting or intervals or really about the exercise strategy and then how to fuel, how to put it in your mindset. Today, we are talking about how to flip the lid on the truth about your poop. And I will have to tell you that in these last 4 years, definitely in the last 34, but more in the last 4, I've learned that women in midlife are tolerating a lot of things, and we don't talk to anybody about it. We don't talk to our doctor about it. We don't talk to our significant others about it, and why would you? But we are here, pun intended, but in fact, we are here to talk about that today. And my guest is Dr. Marisol, who is an ND and a world leader renowned for her passion for cleansing and gut health, not only because she has the degree on the wall, but more so because she's experienced feeling shitty and figured out the hierarchy on how to get healthy. Crowned the Queen of Thrones for over 15 years, she's trained and educated healthcare practitioners and helped thousands of patients transition from shit show to owning their throne. Are you getting the idea? We're going to have a little fun here. Dr. Marisol directs and practices at Sanas, and you know what? I may have mispronounced that. She'll correct me. Health practice in Canada, and has spearheaded Pura Sanas health supplements and invented the Queen of Thrones organic castor oil pack. We're going to talk about that and a line of products. The launch of her first books. Oh shit. Her educational conferences and programs heralds her championing you becoming your legend. Join her movement, pun intended, and help her achieve her goal of being in 1 billion bathrooms by 2020. We can do this. Dr. Marisol, thanks so much for being here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Deborah. That's a great introduction.
Okay, well, I got to tell everybody, listener-wise, I cannot take the credit for writing that. I mean, this is one creative woman. So this is the combination here of a right brain and a left brain in one individual. So so appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you so much. I'm just so excited. The transition into the 50s plus, I just had a big milestone from 40 plus, and things change. And I think it's so important with my patients. I see it all the time, things slow down in the 50s. And, I love how you're all about, let's keep it alive and thriving into our 50s and beyond in the second rebirthing of our lives, right? It's not a time when we should, shrivel up and, start not loving ourselves. It's actually the time where I think we really have to love ourselves more and bring it on, because it's the time that we can live our best, right? So I'm super thrilled to share my golden nuggets about poop and the royal flush, and how, this important, like you said at the beginning, we exercise, we know about fueling well, we know about exercising, but we forget about the most important product that our body produces, right? Which is our poop, right? So I'm just here to take off the lid off the toilet, and let's open the conversation about this, because in North America alone, there are 20 to 30% of people who are diagnosed with IBS, which means they're having some type of bad bowel movement, either too much diarrhea or constipation. But that's only the people who are going to their doctors and telling someone about it, right?
Yeah.
There's probably more like 80% of people who suffer from some kind of problem with their bowel, and others who don't know that they have a problem, right?
Yeah. So amen. So, and to that 80%. So of course I'm speaking just off the cuff in about the women I've been working with. I mean, I would say 80% of those people who do, I would say, what wouldn't you agree? 80% of those 80% are female.
Yeah, absolutely. absolutely 100% of the time. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've heard, one of my patients say, wow, me and all my girlfriends, we're constantly talking about how we can't poo and we're, sitting at our desk all day long. And, even if we do get a little bit of exercise, it's still such a problem. And like, one of the biggest problems is that I think people don't know what is normal. And, that's a huge part of my mission is like, what is a normal poo? Like, how often should you be going? How much? What should it smell? What's your wipe like? What's a color? I have a joke, ongoing joke with my patients, 50 shades of gray or 50 shades of poo, rather, right? Like, what, and this is fitting for Flippin' 50 podcast, like, what is the shape your poo should be? So we need to know what's normal to know when we're not going the right way. And that way we're able to really, zone in. Because I found over my practice in years in health is that, our poo actually can be one of our best diagnostic tools if we know how to read it. So that's part of my mission.
Okay. So let's talk reading poo. And what does it tell us either in so many ways? So I'm guessing we're talking about like, what does being constipated tell us? What does having diarrhea tell us? And then what does the look of poo tell us? I mean, what are we really talking about?
Awesome. So one of the biggest things is consistency. And that's what the traditional medical practice, MDs have really always focused on. And they've used something called the Bristol scale, right? And it basically is a measure of consistency. So whether you have, you're constipated or you have diarrhea and loose stools. Now, constipation can tell us so many different things, but we have to define it first, right? So constipation is typically anyone that is going, less than 12 inches or the length of their wrist to their elbow. That's the normal amount of stool that you should be eliminating out in a day. I guarantee you 100% of your listeners are not, well, 99.9% of your listeners, because I'm listening too and you are. And I guarantee they're not going that much to the bathroom in the daytime, right? In one day. And that is the awesome stool, right? So from your wrist to your elbow, and that measurement doesn't come haphazardly. It's actually the measurement of your lower descending colon from your lower left rib cage all the way down to your rectum, which is where the amount of food you ate and fiber and fluids that you ate and drank the day before that should come out within a 24-hour period. So that's number one. Number two, and I should also classify, it doesn't have to come all out at once either. So, you could be that person who creates that amazing stool first thing in the morning, then they're done. Or, you do any other type of denomination. So you go, 3 times a day, 4 times a day, you do 3 and 4 inches each time you go after you eat, right? So everyone's body's a little bit different. So you have to always consider that, right? So that's number one. Yeah.
Okay. And you read my mind because that was a question. Is it better to do it all at once or not? So it doesn't matter so much. But I do hear and had this question from a private client just the other day. She was saying, I've heard you talk about this and, and about the importance of it. I can go for a couple of days without. She said, is that just my normal? And I said, no. Did I respond correctly?
You totally did, because we do need to eliminate a sufficient amount daily. If not, we have what's called really, really slow transit time. And for the viewers out there, listeners out there, if you can actually test your transit time really easily using what I call the transit time test using beets. So beets really will color your stool as well as your urine. So don't be shocked if this happens. But what you do is at your evening meal, you take your side dish would be beets. So boiled beets, however you want to have your beets, right? So just a good portion, at least a cup of beets. And you eat that, and you can do that for 1 day, 2 days, and 3 days. And then what you look at is after the first day, when do you get the beets coloring your stools? And that will tell you, it should be within a 24-hour period. So if it's less than 24 hours, then you're constipated. If it's less than 24 hours, then you have a really fast transit time. So if it's in like 6 hours, you might even be towards the side of like a diarrhea or quickening of stools. Or if it's more than 24 hours, you're definitely classified as constipated. So that tells you that right away.
Wow. What a fun experiment. Is everybody on that this weekend? Are we good? Okay.
Yeah. Perfect.
So excited. Okay.
Yeah.
You will see this on my social media page, by the way.
Awesome. I can send you some good little handouts too if you want.
The inside story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So what about the flip side? Now we've talked a little bit about constipation. I think there's always a question of what defines diarrhea. What is it? Right. And I mean, when do you say somebody's got diarrhea to the point that, maybe things are going out of their system so fast they're not absorbing nutrients?
Yeah. That's a big problem, right? Because I love the saying, you are what you eat. But in my opinion, it's actually more like you are what you digest, absorb,
Yes.
and eliminate, right? Because you can, like for part of my life, which is why I became a gut guru or the Queen of Thrones, was that I was suffering with IBS pretty severely. And, I was actually ironically a little overweight because of it, because my body was craving foods that weren't really good foods because I was needing some kind of calories, because when I was eating the good foods, I really wasn't absorbing them. Right. So my body was like craving things that were just like, complex carbs like white bread and peanut butter. I just wanted that all the time, and jam, right? Because it was sugar and wasn't the healthiest diet. But when I would eat healthy foods, I wouldn't feel satisfied. So that was a big problem. And the problem was because I wasn't digesting, absorbing, and eliminating properly, right? So the normal stool should be solid, right? It shouldn't be too loose. And when it becomes diarrhea once it's looser and once your frequency is excessive. So if you're going more than 5 to 6 times a day, right? Even if it is mild bit solid, but if you're going 5 to 6 times a day, you're definitely, your transit time is too fast. Your body's not able to absorb the food properly. Like you've got a little bit of an issue there. You again are going for that gold standard of the wrist to the elbow, size stool in any denomination, 3-4 inchers, 1-12 inch, or however you want to do it. I'm not picky there. But just do that, right? So more than that, then you're headed up towards diarrhea, and less than that, constipation. And one key thing about is this: constipation can be a sign of a couple of nutrient deficiencies, one being magnesium. The other thing that it can signify is some hormonal problems, like having a low thyroid, which for women in their 50s is a big epidemic. Right. So it's one of the signs you can see from being constipated, something that you want to rule out with your doctor. Magnesium's an easy thing, and most women are deficient anyway. So I always say to my patients, just start taking magnesium and work with that to try to get your bowels moving better if you're constipated. On the flip side,
so good.
Because I'm sure you recommend that a lot, magnesium, to your clients, right?
Right, because so many of our listeners are also, assuming this is so very much tied together and then not, but these problems are often simultaneous. Somebody's more constipated and they just have assumed this is my normal, I have to tolerate this. And they also don't sleep. So, we're in this midlife, there is hormone chaos going on, and so magnesium so often, because of course I don't diagnose or prescribe, but I do share with, my audience what I glean from you, right? And other functional doctors that, it's one of the top 5 things that's recommended right away. So if you have these signs, try this. And so agree. Magnesium is such a big need.
And it's funny because it's like we over 335 enzymes in our body actually use magnesium. So those are used for like hormone detoxification, environmental cleansing, right? So and mood as well too. And that's another thing that constipation can show. People oftentimes who have constipated tend to have more of a predisposition for depression. Interesting.
Yeah. So it makes us cranky. You don't feel good. Yeah.
It's like you're carrying a baby and you're not pregnant, right? You're not getting the good benefits of high progesterone at that point in life, right?
Well, I was just about to say, you have no idea how often I hear that sentence, but you probably do.
So true. And then the flip side is this. So it's all the opposite for when you have diarrhea. So you could have potentially a hyperthyroid. You're definitely, hyperthyroid, right? Because you'll go to the bathroom a lot more. Your transit time will be too quick. You're not absorbing your food properly. You also tend to have more anxiety when you have a diarrhea type bowel. So then that's, again, more the flip side of depression. You could have too much magnesium if you're having diarrhea. So you got to be cautious on that. And then a big thing with loose stools is also food sensitivities and intolerances. So we oftentimes try to get people to start to open up that conversation and either go get some testing and find out what foods aren't good for them and irritating them. And intolerance is the big deal when it comes to loose stools. But that's, Deborah, like us talking about constipation and diarrhea and just the consistency of stools, that is really only just, one of the 11 golden nuggets that our stool tells us, right?
Holy cow. 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So can I give you another one? I'll give you one more.
Please.
Yeah. Okay. So this is one I really like because this is kind of my lead in with all my patients to kind of open up the poop conversation as I go, are you a hyper wiper? And I get the glare, right? They all look at me and they're like, this doctor is crazy. Or cray cray, as the young ones are saying these days. So the funny thing is this hyper wiping. So the reality is that we should be wiping once and wiping clean. And it's so rare that people do this. The time that they do this is when they're eating a food that is non-allergenic for them, a diet that's non-allergenic. It's low inflammatory and it's exactly what they should be eating. So it's a really good sign about how good your food is for you and how much inflammation you have in your gut and also the bad bacteria that may be living and thriving in your gut. So you think of it like this. Indigenous cultures eating the right food for their bodies, living in their right environment, they literally wipe once and wipe clean, right? And so should you. If you're not, then that's a problem. So that's one of the big ones that I say to patients is, are you a hyper wiper? If you're not a hyper wiper, then awesome. You should wipe once, wipe clean. If you wipe too many times, a sign of food sensitivities, intolerances, inflammation in the gut, which will give you, a bigger belly, right?
Hey, audience, this is Deborah. And actually, Marisol and I got bumped off from a power outage of all things. So we were talking about poop, and the poop gods evidently didn't like it. So we're going to jump right back in. And unfortunately, because it was a little bit of a blip, my fault, but I'm like, Dr. Marisol, I'm sure I was hanging on every word, but let's pick up where we left off.
About
if you remember right? where that was.
About how important it is that indigenous cultures, they wipe once and wipe clean, or they barely don't even wipe and they don't need to. And your dog is the same thing too, right? When's the last time you wiped your dog's bum? You don't. Like I have a little Yorkie and like we never have to wipe her because her food is so good for her body. And that's the same key is that, nature and, she's been one of my best tools to learn about stools because I've watched her and I've noticed, all these things about, how she, positions herself to go to the bathroom and look at your dog. Like nature is such a beautiful example of health, right? And it always will guide us to the best thing. So that's a great tool to remember that when you hyper wipe, you're having problems within your body. So, there's so much more to learn in terms of what your poo will tell you. And I mean, you can know about zinc deficiencies, thyroid issues, irritable bowel. It tells us not only the basics, like which digestive enzymes you may be missing, but it goes far beyond that and even can elucidate if you have hormonal problems. And these are things that you can then bring up to your doctor. So I'm not saying that you learning how to read your poo is going to replace your doctor. But what I'm saying is that it'll give you all the tools so when you do go see your health professional, you're armed, you're ready, you're quicker to get your diagnosis, you're quicker to get results for, optimizing your health. Constipation is such a big deal. They go and then give these people in an old age home laxatives. And the problem with laxatives is it doesn't give you warning and it's quick and it's uncomfortable. You can have a lot of gas. You can have a lot of bloating, right? And then you have to run to the bathroom. When you have lost your mobility as you age, those things become impossible and not great, right? So that's where the tried castor oil packs, and they found that castor oil packs were as good as laxatives without having all the urgency, without having the accidents that traditional laxatives would have. So it's just about finding better tools that work for you in any transition of your life. And for me, the big pièce de résistance in my practice and in my personal care of help getting out of dealing with an irritable bowel on a constant basis was learning to use the castor oil pack because, as a naturopath, I know the supplements to take. I know what exercises to do, like I know the mindset I have to work on. I know all those things. But what I didn't know was how important the impact of stress on the gut was affecting me, and how that was just keeping my irritable bowel irritated. And I wasn't getting better no matter all that good stuff that I was doing. And then when I brought the castor oil packs in, that's what really started foundationally changing how my gut was responding. And it's done that for my patients too. And, the most common comment I get from my patients in clinical practice is like, when we start talking about castor oil packs, is because I talk about them so much. They're like, I'm a believer. You don't need to tell me anymore, Dr. Marisol. I'm a believer, right? Because they work so well. And once you get into a practice, like I teach about castor oil packs as a practice, no different than exercising. It's something that you have to do regularly, right? So, and you're the biggest believer of exercise regularly and getting fit and feeling the system, right? And it's the castor oil pack, that other aspect of it. It's one of our health practices that really need to be, honored. Do you want to hear what the castor oil pack is?
Yeah, please. So that was one of my questions, because as I read your bio, the castor oil pack, first of all, describe to me, if I were going to use it, what does that actually look like?
So where you're constantly working with the striated muscle, like in the muscles in the arms and the legs, the smooth muscles in our uterus and also in our intestine. So when you take castor oil or apply castor oil pack topically over your liver area, you actually start to stimulate smooth muscle contraction. So that's what gets things moving. And so if you're pregnant, you don't want to be taking it. But otherwise, it's across the board. It's good for whether you have, an irritable bowel of the constipation type or an irritable bowel of the diarrhea type, because what it does is it regulates. So it helps things to move properly. Diarrhea isn't necessarily excessive contraction of smooth muscle. It's actually just like a release. Like diarrhea is more like oh my God, there's an irritant, boom, eject, right? So it's not functioning properly, and castor oil packs help to make it function properly. These packs are used, they're legendary, and that's why I often use the word legendary in a lot of my marketing and my promotion, because they've been used since the beginning of time. There's a tradition in Chinese medicine of using castor oil packs for joint pain. In Ayurvedic Indian medicine, they would use it on the abdomen for abdominal digestion discomfort. Mediterraneans would use castor oil. Egyptians would use castor oil. And then it was popularized in the early 1900s by a bedside healer known as Edgar Cayce. So he really brought to fame the castor oil pack as we know it. And then it was adopted into the naturopathic profession. And, we've been using it ever since. So since the early 1900s, it's one of those tools and treatments that, it only falls out of fame because it was messy to do. And that's where my work with this field was to make it easy to do. So I took a treatment that would take like 20 steps to do at home down to 2 steps. So super, super easy. And I created it all to make it doable, right? Because I myself had been told about castor oil packs literally for probably 15 years. And I was like, not doing it. It's too messy. You'd have to at the time, take cotton flannel, throw a bunch of castor oil on it, put it in the oven, let it warm up, then put it on your body, wrap yourself with saran wrap. Like it was just this whole production, right? Laid down on a blanket. Be careful not to get the castor oil everywhere, right? It was, a disaster. So no one wanted to do it. So what I did is I created this compress, the Queen of Thrones compress, which is like impermeable to the oil. It's organic cotton. All you do is literally take it out of the package, put oil, and place it on your body over your liver. And for those listeners who don't know where the liver is on the right side of your body, right underneath of your rib cage. So a lot of people, have liver pains or liver pangs. And that's a really common symptom actually in your 50s and beyond. And, castor oil packs help with that, along with helping with moving the bowels, regulating them. It reduces inflammation so for those clients of yours who have that core inflammation, right? They feel like they're gaining all their weight in their belly, right? Like how common is that, right? High cortisol, but that is all core gut inflammation. Castor oil reduces that, castor oil packs. And then it improves the immune system. It breaks down bad bacteria in the gut and improves glutathione, which is our master detox agent. So it calms the nervous system. And so when you calm the nervous system, your body can actually heal. So it just optimizes all your most important functions. And it's literally my first go-to when it comes to healing the gut. Is like, let's start with castor oil packs, and then we fill in the blanks depending on how their stools are, right?
Let me just clarify. So is that appropriate, right, for anybody? So that means if you've got constipation or diarrhea, either one.
The diarrhea is truly more of like an escape mechanism of the body. Like, you know, when people are, you know, you've heard of people like soiling themselves when they're super scared, right? The reason why is because their body does a force eject. They're under so much stress that their body doesn't want to digest, doesn't want to deal with anything in the intestine. All the blood has gone basically to the extremities. So when you do a castor oil pack, it reverses that anxiety reaction and that force eject of the stools. And so it actually brings blood to the intestines and allows it to work properly. So it helps with regulation of the stool. So whether you're constipated, it'll help the bowels to move better. And if you have diarrhea, it'll just help to regulate it, to calm it down.
What an awesome solution. So good. Yeah. And this is, you know, we don't talk about this, but it's such an important part of just feeling good. And from my standpoint, often I've got women who will ask this most often asked question is, how do I get motivated? You know, and if you don't have the energy, either because you're not absorbing food or you're feeling bloated because you're not eliminating and you actually need to, you know, I mean, those are, you know, big reasons why, you know, if you're struggling, it's not necessarily that you will lack willpower or discipline, but literally you don't feel good and you can feel better.
If you want to continue living where you're at, you just continue doing the status quo and what you're doing. And I get it's hard. Like, I remember being on my, like, not being able to get out of bed, and, you know, I had to take a semester off of school, which was for my personality, just like murder. If you want to achieve a different result, you have to do something different. You really have to put the time and energy in creating the perfect plan for you, right? So if you can't, like, drastic change requires drastic effort, right? There's no other way. If you want a little bit of change, you do a little bit of effort. If you want a lot of change, you do a lot of effort. That is just the principle of life and the principle of nature, right? So we all, as people, if we want to live that optimized life, you know, we want to like flip 50 awesome, like we want to rock it. Like, what we have to do is we have to do something different and practice it. And eventually that practicing it becomes a habit. Like, to me, I wake up, I go to yoga, you know, I come back home, I do my castor oil pack. I'll make my delicious healthy lunch, you know, and then I go about my day, and I had taken my supplements, you know, all those things. So they're just such practices that I don't even think about them. I just forget about them because they're now just natural to me. Where before it definitely was a struggle, but you have to remember you can do this. You just have to take one step forward and then another step and start accumulating those good life health practices that will get you to a better place. So I think that's probably the most important message. And to just, you know, start to watch what your body produces. Your body is absolute genius. It tells you everything that you need to know about everything. All you have to do is listen. And when you listen, then take notes and see how it changes, and like, get to know you. You're the most important asset that you have. You should be spending the most amount of time with you, right? You're very important.
So love it. What a great message to end on. And last but not least, Marisol, how can listeners connect to learn a little bit more? Because inevitably, I know somebody's going to want to follow.
Awesome. So my website is a great place to start. www.drmarisol. So that's DRMARISOL.com. And then Instagram, I'm super active on Instagram at Dr. Marisol. So Dr. Marisol, Queen of Thrones, and Facebook as well too. And I encourage you to go there because I'm constantly posting, giving people tips about, you know, the connection between your stools and your hormones, weight loss and your stools, all these good important things that, you know, in your 50s really start to affect you. And there's a couple of downloads that I've offered for your listeners as well too. So they can either access those from my websites or on any links that you got for them. But yeah, I'd love for people to help me with this movement that we're trying to create about people becoming aware, right, of their number one product that you produce, you know, like and this is the analogy I use, and I'll finish with this, is that, you know, if we work in a big corporation or like a manufacturing company, like say Nike, right, what happens, we if the product is faulty, right? The product is a shoe, no different than you produce poo, right? So the product is the shoe. There's something wrong with the shoe. You start to go look up the assembly line, right? And see if there's a problem in the assembly line. The assembly line is your gut and how you digest things. If you can't find a problem there, then you start to look at the middle management, right? And the middle management would be like your nutrients, how things are absorbing into your body. If there's no problem there, then you go to the CEO. And the CEOs, the chief operating officer, those guys are like the hormonal system, the immune system, and the nervous system. So somewhere along the line, there's a break. And your poo is the product that tells you where the break is. So you can find out so much about your body, and it's about becoming aware and doing things differently. And so I encourage everyone to not be scared, to look into, to poop, peek after they poop, and tell all their friends about it and open up the conversation, right? Because if we're pooping better, we're less bloated, we're happier people, we live a lot better than we would otherwise.
So listeners, I know this may not be a topic you necessarily want to ask about, but if you do have a question, you can leave it below the show link at flipping50.com and join us on the Flipping 50 TV Facebook page, where we're talking about all topics that are important to you. To get all of the juicy resources and the links to connect with Marisol and her ebooks, I've got them all for you. So if you are walking, running, you're lifting, you're commuting, I've got you covered. You'll come to the show notes at flipping50.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed the show and it offered you some value, please leave us a rating in iTunes. It really helps get a message about how to age better to more women. And share this with a friend to surround yourself with a supportive community of women on the same journey. What are you waiting for? Start Flipping 50 today.